Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. I'm Sarah Muriello with Pasadena Humane, and with us today is our presenter for our webinar, Photographing Shelter Dogs. It's animal photographer for Pasadena Humane, Glenn Camhi. Hi, Glenn.
Hey, how you doing, Sarah and everyone?
We're really excited to have all of you here today. So the webinar for today is really like a part 2 to Glenn's uber popular photographing your pet webinar, which he did for us a couple months ago. And we got a bunch of feedback that we really wanted a webinar that focused on photographing shelter dogs specifically, because we know that comes with its own unique set of rewards and challenges. So Glenn graciously agreed to put together an amazing presentation. We're super excited to share it with you. He shot some amazing video clips so that we can learn in many different ways. But before I hand it over to Glenn, I do want to share with you a few webinar reminders. So give me a second to share my screen with you. All right, so just a few housekeeping reminders. You are all automatically muted, so we're not going to be able to hear you, but you should be able to hear us. And we won't be able to see you, but you should be able to see us or our screens. We're going to ask that you save your questions for the end of the webinar. We should have a few minutes at the end for a Q&A, but also we're going to share with you an email address that you can reach out to us if you have any questions that are a little bit more specific for Glenn. The way that you're going to ask questions is to use that chat box. Since we're not using the audio feature for this webinar, please don't raise your hand because we're not going to be able to hear your questions. So go ahead and submit those questions through that chat box. It's the drop down under questions. Your question will only be seen by me, the organizer, and as time permits, I'll go ahead and get those questions over to Glenn. We want to remind you that if you need to jump off this webinar for any reason, or there's an interruption of any kind, or you're having like tech issues, no worries. Tomorrow afternoon, you're going to receive an email with a link to the webinar recording, so you'll be able to watch it anytime. We also want to remind you of a couple free webinars we have planned for August. Our behavior and training manager, Fernando Diaz, will be presenting CATS, Enrichment and Training for Happy, Healthy Relationships, on August 5th from 12 to 1. And then we are partnering with Theodore Payne Foundation, and they're going to be presenting on gardening for wildlife, and that is happening on August 12th from 12 to 1. Again, all of these webinars are free and they are recorded, so please go ahead and register at pasadena-humane.org/workshops. All right, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Glenn. Just give us a second to switch screens.
All right, I believe I'm on. Am I on?
You are, Glenn, and I just gave you presenter permission, I believe.
Ooh, I'm all powerful now. Great. Okay, I am going to start with a bit of a little introduction about myself and some of my photography, so you know who I am and what I do. For those of you who saw the first one I did, thank you so much for coming back. And I am going to repeat a few of those things, but very briefly, and I'm going to send people. We're going to send people to a link to see that original video and to the website where I have a blog that I am going to finally populate more with more information. So let me just get the PowerPoint going and stop dropping things, and then we'll get moving on there. Okay, slideshow, play from start, screen share. Okay, what is it? Main screen, let's see. All right, that seems to be working, right?
Yes, we can see your PowerPoint.
Turning my camera off, and we are going to do this. Okay, so we are focusing this time on shelter animals and unique situation with them, and then we'll go over a few of the same items and then get on to new stuff. So while I talk for just a few moments, I'm just going to show you, if I can get this to work, show you just a few of my photos. These are all photos I've done of Pasadena Humane animals, and almost all of them are at the shelter. A few are on field trips, and we can talk about any of these if you'd like. I am a screenwriter and wannabe director, but my main passion is photography and animals, so I love photographing animals at Pasadena Humane. I got involved with that just a few years ago and absolutely love it. The animals, the people. It's such a great thing to see the difference between an intake photo, if they're lucky enough to get one, which is very hard to get a decent one. There's so much of a rush. And then having time to get a good photo of an animal, and you really see the difference in how quickly animals can get adopted when people can see a great photo that shows off the dog's personality, or cats, but I'm focusing on dogs and not all the other animals this time. So once you get started doing it, it's hard to stop because it's so much fun, and you get attached to every animal, and you really want to see what happens with every one of them, and then you just get hooked on another one. Here's some. Whoops, sorry. I usually just focus on intake adoption photos, which is the main one to show them off. But it's fun to get all sorts of other ones that show off their personality that can be used in different venues, and also it's nice to be able to change out the photos. So I'll talk about some of how we got each of these. It's also nice to get photos of animals with people at times, just as it kind of gives a sense of the personality. People can picture themselves. I just love this girl. That's all I'm going to say. All right. Let's see. And this was at the San Marino Motor Classic. Jay Leno was nice enough to let us photograph one of our favorite shelter dogs, who was then quickly adopted. Okay, so here's what we're going to cover. No need to raise your hand again because we can't see you. The basic overview, we're just going to cover 7 basic tips. There's a few more from last time, but these are just basic tips that apply to any animal photography, but they should help very quickly. Some of them are a little more specific to the shelter as opposed to your own animals, but we should get through those pretty quickly. And again, I'll send you to that the old webinar for more information. And then working with challenging dogs. I'll just cover a few types, and then I think the Q&A can probably get into that a little bit more. And then tips for handlers. If you are lucky enough to have a dog handler when you're working and don't have to do it on your own, there's some tips for them and for you working with them. And then I'll talk a little bit about the equipment. I usually keep a pack with me with a bunch of useful items, and we can talk about that. And then again, depending on how detailed you guys want to get, we can do that when we get to the Q&A. And I'm going to ask Sarah to move me along here and there if I'm going on too long, so don't mind that. So the basic tips. The number one, again, is the same number one that I talked about last time. If you just do nothing else and you leave now because you're bored already, shoot at their eye level. It makes a huge difference. I shared a little video. Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. Okay, I'll get into that a little bit more in a moment. Pay attention to the background and light when you're shooting. Don't just snap the picture. Try to keep it clean. If you're using your phone, just remember to go in landscape mode. Put it sideways, horizontal. It always works better. If you're assuming that you're going to be shooting at a shelter, usually the same one or same couple, take a little time without an animal and just scope out the best spots. I'll talk about that, and I have a little video on that. Figure out what gets each dog's attention as you go. There's a whole range of things. Every dog is going to do it differently, react differently. And also I'll talk about the timing of that because you often have a limited window. For the main photo you're going to take of an animal, get the dog's whole body, not just the face or head. Those can be great shots. People want to see more. I'll get into that aspect more later. And it sounds obvious, but really just be patient and shoot a ton. I will spend a minimum of 10 to 15 minutes. If it's an easy dog, I can spend an hour with a dog to get the right shot. So this part is a repeat. If you've seen this before, go get a nice drink, but I'll keep it short. Shoot at their eye level. This is beautiful Sally, one of my favorite dogs, and you'll see I'm down on the ground with her. That makes a difference. This video is going to play a little bit choppy, so pardon that, but and it won't have sound, but this will give you an idea. I just did a quick sample shooting one of my dogs here. Oh, it jumped really fast. Okay, let's see. Let's actually get it to play. Okay. I'm just using, so that's where I'm up high. Do a little bit of a crouch. It'll be better, or looks like a different type of shot. And then down on the ground. at his eye level. You see this? And now because he's in shadow, I have a little bike light because I was trying to keep things simple. And just get a little light in his eye here.
Oh, that's nice, John. Hey, Louis, watch me. Let's keep right there. Yeah.
And that's that last shot.
Boy.
So, and you have to give a kiss to the dog every time you're done photographing. That's one of the big secrets to good photography. So again, high angle at my eye level, kind of a crouch, and then down at the dog's level. Now, each of these is a fine photo. They each can be good for your purposes, but see how they make you feel, how connected you are to the animal. Do you get a different sense of immediacy or a different emotional feeling? That's something worth keeping in mind. If it's a smaller dog, you can get it, you don't have to be on the ground all the time. The dog can be sitting, first of all, but a small dog can go up on a platform, on a chair, something like that. So that's all I'm going to say about that. There was more in the last one. I also covered background and light a lot last time, but I'll just real quick mention it, and you'll see in a video shortly a little more. When you're going to shoot, just look at what's behind the animal. Is it bars and something industrial and less pleasant? Is it ugly concrete, or can you get a bush or just a long grassy or astroturf background? Anything you can get, at least it isn't too busy, is great. And also make sure you have enough light on the animal. If you're inside and it's dark, or it's fluorescent lighting that gives them an ugly color, just see if you can do something to get out into light. Harsh sunlight is also not great. It gives too much contrast range between light and shadow in most animals. If you're shooting, like cloud or shadow, but with enough ambient light is best. Don't get too fancy about it. We're working at a shelter. You're volunteering usually, but just try to focus on it a little bit. If you're shooting a black or otherwise very dark furred dog, that's a tricky thing to deal with as well. So you may want more direct light on them, or just expose brighter. Even on a cell phone, you can do that. On an iPhone, you just touch the screen and drag up, and that will increase the exposure. So that's something to keep in mind. Lens, I guess I can put my camera on so it's not, we're just looking at text here. You can look at this exciting office. Okay. Landscape mode, we already mentioned that. Don't have to get into that more. Best spots at a shelter to shoot. Okay, actually, I'm going to turn my camera off again. I'm just going to show a brief video that shows how I think about it at the sample at Pasadena Humane where I am, but you can translate this wherever you are. Okay, I'm going to turn off my camera. Hopefully this plays properly. So we're lucky here to have a really big play yard, but there's a lot of concrete around and a lot of harsh grades of shadows here, so it is a little bit hard to find a great spot for a photo. Harsh sunlight is not the best for a photo, and part sun, part shade is really bad. The contrast range is too hard. A lot of cell phones can handle that pretty well with HDR. It's still not ideal. So I often try to find a space where I can have enough grass or turf in the background so that provides a nice clean background. Otherwise, if I have to use the concrete, I'll try to find a spot that's clean and doesn't have all the peeing going on. I'm going to try to find a spot that doesn't have the rivets and all, just so it's not so busy. And I'm going to try to avoid things like those bars there. Looks more industrial, less home-like. You want to give a sense of someone can picture that this is how the dog would be at home. The kiddie pools are great. Dogs playing in a kiddie pool is always fun. So just keeping those things in mind as I'm trying to figure out where to get the photo, I'm thinking of what's in the background. So looking in this space, one thing I'm trying to think of is where a good place to shoot might be. This is very busy. I have done shots facing that way, but it's very busy. The bench is a nice feature. There's some, you have the bushes just behind it. Smaller dogs can look good there. We have a little bush here, so having that as a background is nice. Trying to avoid metal and bars and things like that, and messy concrete. Let's take a half a step. Yeah, there we go, there we go. I think we got it. Okay, so hopefully you could hear some of that. I know the audio wasn't the best, but if anything was unclear, you can let us know. Okay, so hopefully this is on. So again, just have your eye on that right before you take a photo or before you start to position a dog. It can make a huge difference between a photo where the dog really shines and when it's just a little bit busy and doesn't show off the dog as well. And no one's going to be real conscious of it or say, I don't like that dog because the background's ugly. But even unconsciously, they're not going to have as warm and immediately special a feeling necessarily. I'll get into this a little bit, but notice the great Cheryl Collins, who was handling for me there. She did something that any good handler will do. She's constantly aware of where she is, the dog is, and my lens is. And the second that dog was Sean, I think. The second Sean looked at me, she pulled her hand away because she knew I was going to snap the photo. That's amazing to have a handler like that, and it makes photography go so much faster. It's also fun because we make fun of each other all the time, which is helpful too. So let's see, where are we? Best spots to shoot. Okay, figure out what gets a dog's attention. I wonder if did I do one on this too? I don't. No, okay, I didn't do this video, so we won't do that. Okay, so this is somewhat obvious, but I just want to go over it a little bit. There are all sorts of things that are going to get a dog's attention, and every dog's going to be different. And it's not going to be the same every day even. Obviously, first thing is treats and toys and things like that. It's always good to have your regular treats and your incredibly high value, stinky, I don't like using hot dogs so much, but those are stinky salmon treats or just something that's really high value. Don't break out those first. Sometimes a dog will like it once and then be done with it. But you just want to see if they're treat motivated at all. If there's notes on that, if people, behavior staff or other volunteers have taken notes, that's great. But try that. The idea is that you want a dog to be looking at your lens when you're taking the photo. We connect to people and animals when we have eye contact. So looking off to the side like this, not as engaging. So anything that's going to get the animal to look at you. So again, you got your treats, you have crazy noises. We're gonna have some videos of that. If people walking by don't think you belong in an institution, then you're not doing it right. You want to make as many crazy noises as you can. Each noise is probably going to work once for an animal, so wait till you're ready to take the shot and then try to get their attention that way. My own dogs will not react to any noise I make anymore. Squeaky toys can help. Crinkling plastic, things like that. I'm sorry, I'm looking over because I have my note here. I'm trying to think what else I use. Okay, if a dog is not interested in anything, running around with them, maybe the dog's gonna like running toward you, then you have to try to stall them a little bit. Maybe they do kind of like a treat, put one down, run backwards and try to get the shots of them as they come toward you. That's another trick for getting their attention. Otherwise, maybe they are interested in people, so you can ask if someone could just walk by outside the area you're in or just behind you, and maybe that's what they're going to get excited about. Lots of motion. So anyway, and just figure out what gets their attention, but don't try the big things until just before you shoot, in case it only works once. Let's see, where are we? Capturing the dog's whole body, that's pretty obvious. But a reason is that, especially now during the shutdown period, who knows how long this is going to be, people can't really go into shelters and see the animals, so the photos are everything right now. But even when that's not the case, photos are very often the first impression and maybe the only impression that people have of some animals. And as nice it is to see an animal's head, when they can see whole body, see the coloring, the shape, and get a sense of size and proportion, that's going to give them a lot more information. Hopefully a shelter's website or at least social media feed can show other photos that give other senses and some video, like I know Pasadena Humane does. But it's worth getting a bunch of different shots, but it's nice. Seated, standing, laying down, whatever you can. I know you'll see it in some of my photos as well as the ones I already showed you. I do that a lot. The last one of these tips is just be patient. Take your time. We'll go over this with some of the difficult animal situations. You may just want to go visit a dog one day, get them comfortable with you, and just shoot them another day even. That often works best with certain types of dogs. But whatever you're doing, if you're not really getting the shot that you think is good and you have a little extra time, then keep going until you get that great shot. Okay, so challenging dogs. These are just some of the categories I had, but we'll see what you guys want to talk about later. Timid, shy, and anxious dogs. And I have a little video which we'll show in a second on one way you can get, some dogs are so shy and nervous, we call them wallflowers, that they won't even leave their kennel. And kennels are usually not that appealing. They typically have concrete. So there are ways to do it. And I'll show you how we got some really nice photos of a dog the other day. Dogs that are aloof or just won't stay, those are just certain type of difficult animal to get a good photograph of. Hyperactive or just kind of rough dogs. And then also sometimes you have to photograph a dog on a leash. If you're on a walk or it's just a difficult enough dog that you need it. And I want to just talk a couple tips about that so it doesn't look like the dog is, look so bad, like the dog's difficult. You don't want a taut leash. That's probably the number one thing. Oh, here we go. Okay, for some reason I have my photos of leashes here, so we'll do this first. These are photos on walks. So you see what I did here. I positioned the leash under him, and it's just kind of draped off to the side, so it doesn't look on a leash. It just feels a little more comfortable. Here you notice, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the leash is behind him, and up here, handler, I think it was the wonderful Toby is holding him. This is Bailey. So you don't see the leash there. Here you see it, but the key is it's draped. It's not. So we can get the sense this is a friendly, easy dog. Again, leash is behind him, and just something to keep in mind. I often have a dog give me his paw or her paw, drape the leash under their paw, and then have them lay down. That's an easy way to do it. It's not the worst thing, but it's just nice. Just don't have the leash taut. Okay, I'm going to do another video. This will be of working with a very shy dog. I do a little bit of me just having the dog get used to me, by the way, but I don't want to get into behavior issues. We have the amazing behavior staff who are, Fernando is doing some videos, so I'm not a behavior person. It's not what I do. So I kind of gloss over that here. One last preamble. Because I am I on camera here? I don't even know if I'm on camera.
You are.
Oh, good. I'm glad I wasn't doing anything embarrassing. So I typically shoot with this camera and usually this lens. So this is a big thing. You're not gonna have too many issues. I will very often try to get a dog used to the camera first. I will, when I walk into the kennel, I'll keep it draped behind me. If it's a dog I know or I've read has issues with leash biting, I will take the strap off because this is delicious and fun. But I'll put the camera down, I'll put treats around it, just to get a sense if they're afraid of it. Once I'm giving them treats or giving them some affection that they like, I'll just snap a few photos of the ground just so that I can see if they react to the sound. 90% of dogs that I've ever worked with, of the hundreds, don't care, but every now and then some do. I think the one that I'm about to work with in this video that you'll see didn't like it at first, so it did take some time to get her comfortable with it. I couldn't use my cell phone because someone was using my cell phone. Danny, the great other photographer, was using it to videotape. So here we go. I'm going to show this shy dog in kennel video, and I will turn off my camera.
Oh, good dog. That's nice. Oh, that's a good dog. Yeah. Like I say, for a dog this size, you don't need to be.
Okay, let me go back to the main screen. Hopefully you can see and hear me again. All right, so I have a couple of those backdrops, and you can just use a sheet even, it doesn't matter. But you can see, you take the unpleasant kennel and turn it into a really, pretty nice photo. It's a little cramped, so you do have to get down. Again, shooting with a cell phone in that scenario is easier. Although if you do have a nice camera, you can do more with low light usually. So give or take. I was with her. That was one of those times where I spent about an hour because she really is very shy. And I met her a couple times just through the bars before. But it took a little while. By the end, she was, oh, she also had some other issues, but by the end, she was not wanting me to stop, and she kind of liked that blanket. So we had to let her lay down on it for quite a while. Okay, what tips for handlers? Oh, you know what? We are not up to this slide yet. I'm gonna, pardon me, going back through these photos. Okay, so dogs that are aloof or just won't stay. Aloof, let's cover that first. So very often you'll have an animal that just doesn't care about you. They're excited to get out, but then once you're in the yard or wherever it is, you at a shelter that you can get a dog out, they just want to explore. So sometimes you might just have to give them that time. They usually have to go to the bathroom too, so there's a lot of things on their mind. But maybe they just want to smell for a while, and you just kind of have to let them do it. If they do like to play at all, that helps a lot. Eventually you can get their attention. Otherwise, you may just have to run around a lot and get ahead of them, see what direction they like to run or where they like to look, and just get ahead of them and photograph. That is a time, pardon me for 1 second, let me get this, make sure this is on. Okay, that is one time when a camera with a nice zoom lens is helpful, because sometimes these types of dogs don't, they see you and they will just turn and go the other way. So having a long lens where you can get a nice tight shot but be far away is good. Some cell phones do that, but digital zoom is not very great quality, and the cell phones that do have multiple cameras, there's not enough there, but it's better than nothing, and as long as you can see the dog, that's what matters. So and then for dogs that, this isn't quite the same thing, just some dogs are very not aloof at all, they're very attached to you instantly, but they just don't know stay, or they don't want to stay. They will sit in front of you, you give them the treat, and then you take a step back to get the photo, and they're right in your face again. So a couple things that can work that I do. One, if they're treat motivated, that's awesome. You put a trail of treats down, or a whole bunch of treats down, and there, I can do this. And they're busy for a second, you can get a few steps back. And my video froze on my end. I'm gonna, hopefully this is still working. Okay. I just completely froze. Pardon me. Okay, there we go. So that's one way you jump back, and hopefully in that time that they finish the treats and they look at you for more, you can get a photo of them walking toward you. There's interesting effect that little platforms can have, either a chair, a bench, or we have at Pasadena Humane, I think we didn't see photos yet, you'll see some, just a little platform that a dog can sit on. Somehow being on something like that will encourage them to sit and just stay there. And so you can sometimes use that and get back and get a photo. Or if you have kiddie pools, some dogs like that, even if they don't like water, you have an empty one, still there's something about that that's intriguing to many dogs. You can, if you have a handler, that's great, then they can give the dog attention. I think I have a clip of that where, again, Cheryl, who you saw earlier, is just cuddling with the dog and then just pulls away. Now, if the dog is incredibly needy, and I don't like using the word needy because I love the dogs like this, but very attached, and you're just not going to get them separated from somebody, then get a photo of the dog with the person. Or you can just have their arms around them, and or just have them touching them. That's fine too. There's a few other tips we can go over. I don't want to go too long on this, but there's all sorts of things you can try. Now, hyperactive or rough dog. Let's do. Okay, let's talk about, I use the term rough, but just dogs that are very active, probably anxious, and can be a little difficult. If your shelter has behavior staff or other volunteers who have notes, and if you have a dog you haven't worked with, and you can check with other people who've worked with them and just learn a little bit about what the dog is like and how the dog gets comfortable with new people. That's what I do. I'm not going to get into that so much, because each shelter is going to be different. So you talk to the people you talk to staff at the shelter that you're at, and you'll learn the protocol. But one thing I do is if a dog is not comfortable with me at first, but I can see that it's going to happen, I'll just call them drive-by treatings. Just give them treats and then go away. Give them treats another day, go away. They learn that I'm okay. Once I start to see that they're comfortable with me, that'll be the day that I'll probably photograph them. If I have a handler who's worked with the dog, I'll have them handle them. Otherwise, I'll take that slow. Then for dogs that are just very, very active, just run them around. There's actually a big advantage to that. It's nice to run around any animal, any dog you're going to shoot, because of the little quirk that a panting dog also looks like a smiling dog. So one of the ways I get dogs to always look like they're smiling, or almost always, is I just run them around a lot and they're panting a little bit, just a little bit. So anyway, tire dog out. Let me see if I have this video. Yes, okay. Go to another video.
There you go. Yep, he's right at me. Nice.
Ready?
Yep, now she's got the smile. You got it. You see? Well, she's leaning on you, isn't she?
Okay.
All right. You gotta try new sounds. Yeah, it's working.
Okay, and you'll see at the end there that let me turn off the screen sharing here. Okay, so you'll notice at the end of that, that was one of those photos. That last dog was not an overactive dog. That dog, that was a very affectionate, timid dog that really wanted to be up against Cheryl there. So that's why I did the photo that way. Another thing about, I want jumping back to timid and shy dogs. One signal, obviously, that a dog is uncomfortable or anxious is, the tail will be tucked. That can have other meanings, but generally it signals that. And two things about that. One, getting a photograph, if your dog just keeps the tail tucked under but is otherwise okay with you, take the photograph such that their tail isn't visible. Have them standing just straight onto you so you can't see the tail, because seeing a tucked tail in a photo doesn't evoke as pleasant a feeling. So just hide it. Also, if you start to see that a dog is nervous or stressed or growing stressed or nervous as you're doing if you're photographing, just like anytime you're working with an animal, lay off, give it a rest for a while, or maybe this isn't the day you're going to photograph that animal. Again, that's something you talk about with staff and behavior staff, and you should learn, anytime you're going to work with dogs, you should learn a bit about body language and animal behavior, things that aren't immediately obvious if you don't know these things. But that's another topic, again, that's for Fernando and other staff to talk about. So let's see, photograph dogs on leash, we talked about already. I just want to make sure we have time for Q&A, so I'm not going to get into that. Okay, let's see, tips for handlers. This is love this shot. Sorry, it's Carol, also amazing handler. Okay, so I already talked about one of the. Let me turn this off for a second here. Okay, so I already talked about a few things. That a good handler is, the key is always being aware of three things: where the lens is, where you are, and where the dog is looking. So it's not immediately intuitive, but that's the gig. Or if you see something great and you see the photographer's not paying attention, quick, get the photographers, get their attention. I gotten a lot of shots that I would have otherwise missed. And your job is to just come up with creative or clever ways to get a dog's attention. You can go through a whole range of toys till you find the one that animal likes, while the photographer is busy trying to figure out the lighting or figure out a better angle, or you're both trying to figure it out. Maybe the dog likes one of you more than the other, then that's a very helpful thing. But other things that a handler can do is a little bit different right now during COVID era, but yeah, I'm gonna put the camera back on. As I said, one of the most important things is you want the dog's eyes to be looking at not at you, but at your lens. Now, two things about this. I have to explain a preamble first. So when you're using your cell phone, you can hold it like you're often holding it like this, so it's not quite as big a deal. When you've got the camera, your face is behind here. As soon as most dogs, when they can't see your eyes, they might disengage. So sometimes you do want to hold the camera like that. It also helps if you have the expert tip here. That should be off. But anyway, you want to make you can try this, but if you have a handler, then the handler will be the focus. So you want the handler holding a treat, not over here, but right over your lens. So the dog is going to look right here, or trying to get their attention. Now these days we are even with masks, we're staying 6 feet apart. I don't. This will live on hopefully long after this period is gone. But for now, there's other ways. You can have the handler just stand behind you, but in the same line of vision, or get the dog close enough and then pass on. You take over the mantle of holding something, same way you would do if you're working solo. But when you do have a handler, that is generally one of the jobs of the handler. Okay, I don't want to get more into this. So yeah, that's it just for now. Okay, equipment. I really obviously you just need the camera or your smartphone and some good treats. That's the minimum. I'm gonna just show you some of the things that I like to carry with me, and then I think we'll wrap up this part. Okay, equipment. So some of what I carry when I'm shooting. Sometimes it's just a cell phone and that's it. Simple. Often I'll use often I'll use my good camera. But I usually can pack with a few bandanas in there and a couple ties and bows and things like that, just in case I want to dress up the dog a little bit. Like this guy, I'm probably going to. And then the only other things, I'll keep a bunch of squeakers and toys. I have my kit with really good treats, the really high value ones, stinky salmon or something like that. A couple squeakers, my Purell. And then I'll usually have one backdrop here, which I might use in as we show in another video, if you have a tight spot, no good backgrounds, or you have a studio space, we have a little one that we sometimes use. And then I'll keep my reflector with me. Today we don't need it, the light is fine, but just in case I might use that. But the big thing is just have a camera. I gratuitously threw that photo in because that's what we shot right then. Okay, let me change this. I'm just going to show you a few more photos that I have here, and then we will we'll go to Q&A. Yeah, so we should have time. Is this? I think I have my most serious and important photo. Yes, so it's very important to have very serious photos. I always like to get my goofy photos in. They are really fun for social media. I used to just skip past them, and now they're my favorite photos. So always keep them. I love these expressions, and they're great for captioning too. Very serious. This dog actually was very serious, but we had to do something. One other thing. General tip. You may have a plan of what you want to do. Go with the moment, because your other job is to capture a dog's personality. This was my favorite photo shoot ever with one of my favorite dogs of all time, Biggie. I was going to set up this backdrop to make this beautiful photograph, and he decided that my backdrop was a toy. And instead of fighting it, I just went with it, draped it over him, and he could not believe it. He was the happiest dog in the universe, and he just started spinning. He wrapped himself up completely, and these are some of my favorite photos I've taken as well. So if I was set on what I wanted to do instead of catching his personality, I wouldn't have gotten my favorite photos. Again, play. And I think we'll move on to Q&A here. So Sarah, you're up.
Hi. All right, yeah, we've been getting some really great questions in the chat. So one of the questions was about your prep work. Do you kind of have like a prep program that you do before you enter the shelter, before you actually start shooting, that's specific to you?
Sorry, a number of jokes went into my mind, but I won't use any of them. Well, okay, the most simple thing is I put on my shelter shoes, which is my junk shoes and my junk shirt, just because you're going to get dirty. And it's also not sanitary, so you want to throw that stuff on and then take it off when you get home. And these days, that's doubly so, but I always do that. I always keep my spray can of alcohol in the car or somewhere to cleanser, just to clean the bottoms of my shoes so I don't track any disease into my dogs. Make sure I have a list of just the equipment I know I need. I keep my own leashes, so I'm not handing back and forth leashes. As far as the plan, sometimes I'll just go and photograph whichever dogs I really want to that day I've seen, and I ask to make sure no one else has just done them. Otherwise, I will spend time just reading all the notes for each dog. behavior at Pasadena Humane, behavior staff as well as other staff, as other volunteers, keep pretty detailed notes about every animal. If a dog's been having health issues, I might ask health staff and just, find out what's going on. You always want to check, because you may have known a dog for a long time, and I've made this mistake myself of thinking, oh, I know this dog, and then it turns out some new thing is going on for them, and if I didn't ask, I could screw up. So that's that. I'm trying to think of anything else. The obvious, make sure your battery, or if you're using a camera, that your battery and your card or have room and are charged. That's about it.
Awesome. We had a question about, do you have a recommended quote unquote budget camera or some kind of package deal you'd recommend?
Let's see. I don't know these days. I don't know offhand. I haven't really looked into that. I can certainly do a little research and post something, but I would say just the cheapest camera you can find. Do a Sony Canon or such that has a detachable lens and you can get some sort of zoom on it is great. Even if it's not detachable, it's going to be decent. So somebody had asked about a specific camera, which is a really good camera. There's depends on, everyone's idea of budget is different. So I don't want to get into, I don't know how to say price range, but even these days, I think you can go to most shops and at least test it. Just take a couple shots and see if it looks good to you, then it's probably the right choice. Let me just lens though.
Yeah, that was what I was gonna say. We're getting a lot of questions about lenses. So let me just summarize. They want to know, like, which do you use, what size? There's a ton of lens questions. So
right.
Tackle that.
Couple big considerations. And again, for those of you who are just gonna use your smartphone, ignore us. But my favorite, I tend to use Canon. That's just what I've grown up with. Nikon, just as good. 24 to 70 is what I use. Anything close to that is good. What I like about it is that that's a really nice range for getting fairly wide if you're very close to the animal, or if you, for some reason, you're doing a more artistic shot, you just want a lot in it for some reason, and it can zoom in a good amount. 70 is a pretty decent zoom for getting if you have to be far away. And the range, having that range is nice, so you have flexibility, because you really, at first I started just using fixed lenses, being cocky, and then realized I can't always get to where I need to be, so I need to zoom. So that's my go-to lens. I almost exclusively use it. Now, there's two reasons why I might not. I sometimes use this little pancake lens, which this happens to be a 40 millimeter. It's can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Good. My computer stops sitting around it. The reason I'll use this is that it's a great lens, but it's really flat. See how it doesn't stick out? So if there's a dog that's really scared, I know is kind of scared of this giant thing, but I still want to use my good camera, this is going to be a little less scary to them. It's not a huge difference, but still, that big thing coming at them can make a difference. And then I happen to, my all-time favorite lens just in general photography is a fixed 50 millimeter that goes down to 1.2 f-stop, or I guess up to. It's really hard to work with because focusing is so precise and dogs move, but sometimes I like to use it just because you get these stunning photographs with it that you can't get with any other lens.
Awesome. While we're on that topic, we had a question about, sorry, I just lost it here. It was about aperture. Oh, did it just disappear from the chat?
Okay.
Okay. Oh, here we go. No, what is the focal length of your lens and aperture?
Okay. So, well, again, it depends on which ones we're talking about. So again, I've got my 2470. Yeah. So, this is a 2. Okay, I'm just trying to. This is a 2.8. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, 2.8. And then the 50 goes down to 1.2. I don't even remember what the pancake goes to. I should know this offhand, but I don't. I should memorize that. Okay, but I am almost always going to use the lowest. I'm going to open up the most. So I'm going to go to the 2. I'm not going to go to 1.2 on my 50 very often because I think I said this last time. The pupil will be in focus and the eyelashes will be blurry. So you have to have a calm dog for that, or get back a little bit farther. But it's beautiful. But the reason, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, when you open to an f-stop like a 2.8, you are getting very narrow depth of field and focus. So if we were photographing me right now and you focused on my face, I'd be in focus, that background would not. You see, okay, you still see the slideshow, right?
Yes.
Okay, so actually you can see it right here. He's in focus, and then the truck and person behind him are not. So he pops more. It's open enough. I'm fairly sure this was it's probably a little more than 2.8. There's probably in the three range. Because a lot of him is in focus. Here, same thing. The background's all out of focus. Even his body's out of focus. His head pops. And same here. So it's a great way to take a busy background and make it soft and not interfering. So that's what I will almost always do. The only times you're going to go for something else is if you have a specific lighting situation or you really want to get everything in focus. The other big thing that I'm trying to find useful photos, but I realize it's here, that I'm going to play with a lot is shutter speed. I know when I'm doing photos like this, and this one wasn't even as fast as some of the others in the series, I want to stop time as fast as possible, or I'm getting a running dog like that one I showed you in the video before. In that case, I'm going to go to as fast a shutter speed as I can, which again means I'm going to probably go to 2.8 because when you open up to that, you're letting more light into the camera. So the faster your shutter speed, which just means for those of you who aren't familiar with this aspect of photography, the shutter speed is just how quickly it takes a photo. Is it going to do it in a 10,000th of a second, or is it going to take a full second? Full second, there's going to be a lot of blur. You're going to capture water or something or a racing dog with a much faster shutter speed. If all you're using is your cell phone, you can still do this. I showed this in the last presentation that we did. You can still get changed shutter speeds with cell phones.
Yeah, and actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. So Glenn, a couple months ago, did a really fantastic webinar on photographing your pet, which obviously a lot of those techniques could translate to photographing shelter dogs. And he focused a lot on lighting and also use of the iPhone, right, to take those photos. So I did put the link to that webinar recording in the chat. I will also include it in the follow-up email that you're going to receive tomorrow afternoon with a link to this webinar's recording. So if you have more specific questions about lighting and also use of the iPhone, it's all in that webinar. And we did get a question from Claudia. Could she present this webinar to her shelter volunteers? Glenn, I think I know your answer, but.
Gee, of course, yes. More to the anything that can help people think about photography of dogs and cats and iguanas and everything. I always go to the iguana. I don't know why. Rabbits is better because the photos save lives. That it comes down. It's simple as that. Study after study has been done. That's just two. There's more than that. That show that good photos of adoptable animals get those animals adopted. So yes, share away.
Yes, we would love for you to share any of our webinars far and wide. We have a question about where'd you got your backdrop? And I asked you the same thing, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Where did you get that backdrop?
I wasn't prepared to give you the answer. Amazon, but the name of the company, I should know it. I'm looking because I thought it was in here. It's not. I will share that as a follow-up. Which one? I can't remember the woman's name. It's a name, but they're different sizes. The really big ones are obviously going to be pricier. But this is the one that I like the most because it's the least wrinkle prone. And also the backs are white, they a little color bleed, but you basically get a 2-color backdrop. I can't remember the name, but I'll list that later. And I'll explain where I'll list it also in a second. But I want to say you can use a sheet, just a bed sheet that you're not really caring about. You have to wash these things every time anyway because animals are all over it. But I can't remember what I was going to say after that. But people can also go to my website. I should have remembered the link. It's glenncamhi.com/ I think we did it under animals, right? Could have been webinar. I actually don't. Yeah, I think it's webinar. Sorry, glenncamhi.com/ webinar. That was the blog that I set up for the last one, which you'll notice I didn't keep updating recently because I've been too busy. But I am about to finally put on a big piece just about doing photo editing work in Camera Raw or Lightroom and then Photoshop. So that'll be on there soon, because that's taking the photo is really only half the job. It's fine, but if you can at least do a little touch up, at least on your cell phone or in some editing software like Photoshop or Lightroom, you can take a decent photo and make it great without, not altering things, but just bringing out the quality that's in the photo but isn't realized, because cameras do it automatically, but they don't know what you want to emphasize.
We also got a question about what to do and how to use a reflector and the camera when you're by yourself.
Right. I think I don't remember I included the video on that, but I did shoot a video, which I'll also put on the website. It takes a little dexterity, and I'm a huge klutz, so it's entertaining to watch me do it. But let's see if I can show you just with something I have on hand. Okay, we'll pretend this is a reflector, but here, the trusty dustpan reflector. So you're basically taking your photo like this, you're finding out where the light is, and you're going like this with it till you get it, and you're standing here and you contort yourself. Or you can lean it on something if you have a chair or anything else. You can sometimes prop it up. I never use a stand, and I never use a tripod when shooting animals, because animals move. There's no point. But you can do it. You can lean it on your knee. It is really fun for other people to watch and not help, because it looks ridiculous, but it's doable. All that was to say, I will find that video and put that on the blog as well.
Fantastic. Another question we had was any suggestions for photographing a litter of puppies at once, and maybe even like more than one adult dog, right? I mean, sometimes we get action shots. So how does that usually work? Yeah.
Let me just backtrack for 1 second. For anyone, we can't assume that we got to assume that we have people at all different levels. What were we talking about with the reflector and why? Real quick. When you don't have a light to get light into a dog's face or to make their eyes pop with a little bit of sparkle of light on them, a reflector is just a shiny piece of fabric. It's usually white glossy on one side, or white sheer on one side, and silver or gold or something on the other side. That's more reflective. You can make one at home with just poster board and tinfoil on the other side, and that will reflect light, and it brings a lot of light, even if it's just a cloudy day, into their face. And I have a lot of samples of that. So that's that. That's why we use reflectors. And it's cheaper than having lights. So I promptly forgot completely what you asked me. And I can't hear you either. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Glenn. The question just completely left the chat. So.
Oh, shoot.
I think it was about litter of puppies, right? So multiple animals in a single shoot.
So the key, I've done a few of those, the litters of puppies at Humane Society. I think I had a photo of one of them at the beginning. The key is get some sort of a basket or lay out a bunch of blankets with a rim around that they can play in and stay in. They may well climb out, but if it's a little higher on the sides, but you can still get into or get just over the hump, they're more likely to stay in there, especially if it's a lot of comfortable blankets or towels. They're just going to want to roll around in that for a while. They'll get bored after maybe 4 or 5 minutes, but that's enough for you to get a lot of photos. The nice thing is it does not matter what a litter of puppies is doing. It's adorable. So every single shot is awesome. So you really don't need that much time. I've done it where you just stick them in a basket and you do it from overhead. I don't tend to do overhead shots of animals, but that's one where it's great. And then multiple dogs. Yeah, I think we did talk about that a little bit in the last one as well, because I mean, I've got 2, but I know them. Two things. We talked about dark fur dogs. If one is very dark and one is very light, or if you have one dog that's spotted like that, that's always a challenge just with lighting. So you want to expose for sort of in the middle. The other thing is you got to kind of find out what gets each one's attention. Ideally, they both like the same treats and they can both sit and stay. That makes life easier. Otherwise, you're just trying everything you do for one dog, you're doing it for both. It helps to have a handler. We don't do a lot of that at the Humane Society. When we ever shoot multiple dogs, it's because it's play group and you want to see them playing. So you're just getting what you want. But if it's your own animals, you have a lot of time to practice and figure out what gets them to stay. And if someone wants more detail on that, I can go over it, in a back and forth later.
We had another question about lighting. Is it okay to use like a bike light? Was one of the questions. Can a regular bike light work?
Absolutely. And that first video I think I showed where I got down on the level of my dog with my dog Louie, and I shined the light in his eyes, but made his eyes pop. That was a bike light. I'm pretty sure I'd wrapped a tissue around it with a Band-Aid just so it's not too bright in his eye, even at low. And the reason I did it there, I have some lights, but I wanted to keep things low tech and cheap, so with things people have at home. So you don't have to go get a bunch of equipment. Good flashlight to do, especially LED flashlight is good. And again, if it's too bright, put some tissues over it, or anything that's that's translucent. And yeah, and just experiment. See how far you have to be away. But in that, when you can rewatch this, you'll see that little video I shot. I'm just holding it like this and shooting like this, and it made his eyes beautiful. And the shot before that, where I didn't have it, his eyes were a little dead. I would have had to Photoshop to make them pop. So yes.
We also had another question about, we had another question about that actually specifically. Do you always shoot with no flash when you're photographing the dogs?
Yeah, in the studios, I know some people will use a flash. I never use a flash for animals for two reasons. One, I don't know where, unless it's a very controlled studio setting and you've spent a lot of time getting a dog used to where they're supposed to be and they're an easy dog, you don't know where they're going to be. So you can't have a flash really on a stand. Flashes right on the camera are terrible because they give you that. Dogs, it's not red eye. I forget the term for it. It's a whole different process that's happening, but you get those golds and greens depending on, actually, it's fascinating. It depends on the dog's fur, but you don't want that. And the other reason is that some dogs are scared of them. Either the sound or the bright flash is not comfortable for them. So I will always use something more steady light, whether it's a light or a reflector.
And we had a lot of questions coming in about indoor versus outdoor lighting. So do you have any just general recommendations for your lighting settings, whether you're shooting inside versus outside?
Yeah, and while we talk, I like to have visuals. So the best lighting of all is outdoors in shade or cloud like this. It's even, you can see him, there's enough play of light on him that you see contours around him. The blanket is so perfectly placed, you'll notice. So same here, nice shade. Here we have a little sunlight on him, but I will very actively get an animal in shade. If I at all can, I will place them, and you can see that in most of these. Now he was in sunlight, but it was still somewhat soft and it was even on him. Here we did have dap up light. I had to spend a lot of time in Photoshop to actually make this work because the dark parts were way too dark and the bright parts were way too bright. So this is how it actually looked to my eye, but a camera can't get that and won't know how. So this was about an hour of work in Photoshop to make it look as natural as it did to my eye. Same now, he was in shadow. This is that photo. His eyes are aglow here because I had that bike light. There, same moment without the light, you see his eyes are not as interesting. Here they are because he's looking into the sun. Yeah, okay, so those are these. Do I have any indoor shots here? Yeah, these are indoor shots. This is the worst scenario. We have a big, wonderful playroom that's lit with fluorescent lights, but then has big windows, so daylight's coming in. So you get this greenish yellow muck colored light inside, but environmentally friendly, so it's good. And then you get this blue light outside, so animals and everything look ridiculous. To make him look as natural as he did, I spent a lot of time in Photoshop correcting the color locally around the image. You can see in the bottom left one, his ears are very blue. That's a normal cast. Your eye sees that, so I didn't mess with it. But yeah, that's terrible lighting, fluorescent lights, especially, or a mix of different colors like that. Or like this, like right here, my head right now, no one would photograph me like this, or ever, but definitely not like this. So I prefer even soft lighting if I can, or just when then I can control one kind of brighter light. I like, one thing I do a lot, I talked about this in the last one, I'm big on getting a backlight to make the back of an animal pop, make their hair pop and separate from the background. I talked about that in that video.
Great, fantastic. Well, I do want to remind everyone that you're going to get a link to this webinar recording tomorrow afternoon. And in that same email, I'll also include the link to Glenn's webinar that he did a couple months ago, and also any links that Glenn would like to share. I know Glenn glenncamhi.com/webinar has a lot of info on it, and we'll include that link in case you missed it in the chat. Glenn, do you have any parting words for the attendees?
Minor thing, the dog on the left there, that's one of the situations of backlight making them pop against the background. Yeah, thank you so much for attending. I'm so excited that we got as many people as we did. Go shoot, share them with us. We'd love to see them. You can tag Pasadena Humane. You can send them to me if you have questions. I would love to see what you're doing. I'd love to learn if you've discovered things, and keep the dialogue going and go save dogs' lives and cats and iguanas and rabbits.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you, everyone. We hope to see you next time. See ya.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us.